Now, we know that every time Joe Rogan is talking about aliens and conspiracies and all that stuff, it's going to be good. And we have Billy Carson here? Oh, nah, let's rock.
Is a good way to segue into like what you do, and because these subjects, so many of these subjects, so many people have like an instantaneous reaction.
Yeah.
And that instantaneous reaction is, oh, hogwash.
Yeah.
If this was true, I would already know about it. It would be taught in universities.
Yeah.
It would all be. But then you find out, like, no one is really just kind of trying to piece stuff together, specifically talking about these ancient tablets, which are, to me, some of the most interesting things about ancient history, particularly what came out of ancient Sumer.
Yeah.
Ancient Sumer, when you look at their tablets and, like, what are they saying? And why would they dedicate so much time to talking about this stuff?
Exactly.
Why do they have pictures of giant enormous people looking things with like a humanoid with a tail sitting on their lap? Like, what is this, just fiction?
Yeah.
Like, why would they detail this, and how do they have a representation of the solar system with the correct amount of planets and relatively the correct order and size? You know, it's not exact, but it's an artistic version of the real thing.
Yeah.
And how the hell 6,000, 5,000 years ago do they know that?
Yeah.
And what explanations do we have? Like, what's the conventional explanations when people tried to dismiss what they knew in ancient Sumer?
Well, the conventional explanation is always going to the term mythology. They throw mythology around, you know, left and right to cover up the fact that they have no clue or idea. So they turn it into mythology so they can kind of say it's all fantasy and fairy tales, and this is how they express themselves or how they understood the universe. It's all mythology, it's all fake, but in reality, it's not all fake. These people left behind such detailed records and information. It's a time capsule of information on stone tablets for us today to be able to decipher, break down, and understand, and that's what we're here to do now.
When you look at these ancient languages like cuneiform, can you read that? Do you know how to read it?
Yeah, a small amount of it, yeah. Studying it from books that I have bought right off of Amazon.
Oh.
Yeah, so basically you take a stick. It looks like a stick with a kind of a curved end, right? Almost sharpened. It's called a stylus. And then
just like a stylus for an iPad.
Exactly, very similar, right? And then you take a piece of wet clay, and right before it's too wet or too dry, right in the middle stage, you then start wedging, making these incredible lines into the clay, and then from that you get this cuneiform text. So this text literally, some of the letters actually relate to complete ideas. But it's incredible work, and it takes a long time to do. And then you have to let this thing dry, and then it becomes stone. So, if people were supposed to be trying to worry about how they're going to get their next meal, shelter for the night, and all these kind of things, who has time to sit down and write these incredible works of art like the Epic of Gilgamesh, for example?
Yeah.
So I think they really were writing down, and also they were transcribing information that was given to them by these quote-unquote gods with a lowercase g.
Wow.
So when you're reading things like the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh, for people who don't know, is one of the oldest versions of a lot of the stories that you hear in the Bible. Very similar to them. There always seems to be a great flood. There's a few heroes. There's angry gods. There's a bunch of stuff going on. And Zecharia Sitchin's work was like the most controversial on the Sumerian text, right?
Yes.
Because there's a whole website called sitchiniswrong.com. Like, people go crazy about him.
Yeah.
But when he starts talking about it, when you read some of the things that they wrote, and when you see like some of the images that they created, the images that look like the double helix from DNA, and there's a bunch of that now we represent the caduceus, which represents pharmacies and drugs. Like, that's the old version of an image of the double helix of DNA, or at least it looks super similar to that.
Oh, it definitely is, because it's referenced even in the Egyptian Book of the Dead and other ancient texts. So there's no coincidences here. Now, Zecharia Sitchin, I don't particularly go by his work. Not because it's controversial. I believe he was one of the greatest researchers of all time. And the reason why is because he laid out so much information for us to begin to scratch our head and ask questions. But
real quick, a lot of these books, well, some of these books are easier to find, but some of these books, if you go on Amazon, and this is my opinion, they're priced at a certain price point that the general public can't afford. And in my opinion, I believe it's because they don't want you to have that information, right? They want to keep you away from the information so that they can control you. This is just my opinion, right? Let me know what you think. I don't want to make it seem like I'm reaching, but back to the video.
Figured out was that by going through the UCLA CDLI online cuneiform digital library, say that fast 10 times, I was able to take stone tablets and decipher them myself. So anyone can go online to the UCLA CDLI online cuneiform digital library and read these stone tablets for themselves. You don't need Zacharias Hitchens. You don't need anyone else. And as I began to break these tablets down,
do they have them transcribed, or are you reading the actual tablet?
They transcribe them. They actually transcribe them into English for you.
Is there controversy as far as, like, are there different versions of the transcription? Like, does some people think it's interpreted differently? Is like some debate about that?
Only where it comes to where some of the text is missing. There could be pieces chipped off of tablets. Right. You see that corner missing from that tablet right there in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Just look how wild is that?
Yeah.
Just how wild is that exists? Yeah. And that this was... It's so hard for people to put in their brain 5,000 years of time, and that there's these people that have this very bizarre language. Like when you look at that language, we don't even know what it sounds like, right?
Right. No, and the language popped up out of nowhere. You know, you're talking about a civilization that appeared out of nothing.
It looks like computer code.
It does.
Doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Just imagine like a human being deciding that they were going to write down in these very bizarre, and they all agreed that all these things mean a certain thing. So they had to somehow or another have a Rosetta Stone or something where they're documenting it so that people can learn it and teach it. And then we're looking at it 5,000 years later.
Yeah.
It's so amazing.
It is. And what's incredible is this text was translated in the 1800s, long before Zacharias Sitchin was born. So there are some, some rumors that, he was the only one that could decipher these tablets. Well, no. George Smith, who worked as an Assyriologist and wrote many books and deciphered these Sumerian tablets in the 1800s. So we're talking about texts that have been deciphered for a few hundred years, nothing that was just deciphered recently.
So what are the first decipherings? Like what year was the first deciphering?
It was in the 1800s. I think around 1850, George Smith. He actually worked at the, I believe it was Cambridge.
What was his take? Like, when he's reading all these wacky stories and all the Anunnaki stuff, like, what's his take on it?
He is literally subscribing to this information the way almost that you and I see it today. These people saw something, experienced something, interacted with something, and he cataloged it, and it inspired him to write a complete translation of the Enuma Elish and the 7 tablets of creation. And he talks about the fact that that information was copied right from those tablets and put into the Old Testament of the Bible. And so, not exactly like it's going to go from here to the Bible, but it went to other ancient papyruses and scriptures and so forth. And then later on, when it was discovered in caves, people took those and then said, okay, we got to put this into a book. And then it became the Bible much later, around 100 AD. But he subscribed to the theory that these people interacted with beings in some way, shape, or form, and that also this information is so incredible that it became part of the biblical text.
Did you ever read the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Yes, yeah.
So the Dead Sea Scrolls, what was it found in? What year was that? It was in Qumran, right? They found them.
It's Qumran, but I think again this was also, I believe, in the late 1800s or early 1900s.
Is when they found them. So these things are written on animal skins, and this is this is a very old version of those exact same stories, or some of similar stories.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weirdness in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Now, my question really quick is, a lot of this stuff was found in the 1800s, 1900s. I wonder why specifically that time period. Just out of curiosity, if you know in the comment section, drop a comment below if you have any idea. Let me know your thoughts. Back to the video.
I haven't read it, but is there any references to anything that's similar, like Anunnaki type characters, the Nephilim or anything like that in the Dead Sea Scrolls?
They show up everywhere. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Enuma Elish, and the Epic of Atrahasis. Of course, even in the Bible, they're known as the Anak, A-N-A-K. We were grasshoppers in their eyesight, it says in the biblical text. So no matter where you go in any culture, you're going to discover that these beings, in some way, shape, or form, engaged mankind, brought knowledge, teaching, building techniques, and just so much more wisdom and information, esoteric wisdom, alchemy. All these things came from these people.
So the craziest version of this story is that they genetically engineered us out of lower primates and put us here to mine gold.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then established different types of
Ooh,
civilizations and taught us how to build things, taught us all these different things. And enough time has passed that we've kind of forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Enough time has passed. That's the wackiest version of it, right?
Right. That's the bare bones minimum.
Yeah, the wackiest versions they made us, which is we've talked about this a couple of times, but how bizarre it is that human beings have this incredible fascination for gold. We're fascinated with gold. Yeah. This fascination with gold is really weird. Like, why back when it was basically useless? You couldn't make a knife out of it. You couldn't, like, it didn't make sense that this would be so valuable. Just because it's rare, you're barely alive. We're going, We're going back to full-on hunter and gatherer, our ancestors with spears and stone chipped, and then after that, gold emerges, and it stays. Yeah. It stays forever. Yeah. Now, when you read Zecharia Sitchin's book, he talks about this in the 1970s. His description of it was that they needed to suspend gold particles in the atmosphere because their atmosphere was being destroyed.
Right.
Then you move to like somewhere around the 2000s when climate scientists start proposing this idea of suspending reflective particles in the atmosphere.
Right.
And then when you realize the unique properties of gold, how unusual it is in terms of like a building material, you can coat things. The reason why things are like coated in gold, silver plated, or gold plated rather, you can take a tiny piece of gold and cover an enormous area with it. It's a strange metal, like really weird. And what, the supposed story is, it's very common on Earth, very rare on Nibiru.
Right. Yeah, that's the story. And now when I started looking into this gold thing myself, and here's what I came up with. So when you start analyzing the text, you discover that there was an encampment in a place called South Africa at Adam's Calendar. Okay. Now at Adam's Calendar, there's actually the very first gold mines discovered. They're dating them back to about 200,000 years ago.
Wow.
And that's incredible because there's a building there that looks like a worn down structure. Now, in the tablets, it talks about the fact that the Ijiji, who were the working class Anunnaki beings who were cleaning out the Euphrates and Tigris River so they can create irrigation and, create a bustling civilization. Also, they were doing the actual construction themselves. No people needed, just them working. They were like the construction workers, and Anu and Enki and Enlil, these leader gods, were like, the foremen, the master architects and so forth, right? The boss. So these people were working, but they weren't supposed to be enslaved. They were volunteers. They got tired of doing the work, according to them, for about 250,000 years of labor on Earth, and also, according to them, on Mars. This is in the text. They call it Lamu. And so they decided to go to war against Enki, Enlil, and Anu because their demands had not been met. So they went to meet them in the Epic of Atrahasis. They go to Adam's Calendar. They go to that same structure that was discovered where that gold mine is located. I was like, holy crap, there is some link here to gold. Specifically, exactly, I don't know. But I know if you're an advanced civilization, you need gold. And the people that you have working it for you probably think, it's to adorn or to adorn yourself or in recognition of the gods. So they'll wear it and they'll utilize it, but not for technology.
And one thing I'll say is gold has been one of those things for the longest time that every country, has fought over, right? And, it's so interesting this point because I never really sat down and thought about what about it though, right? Because we all know it has value. And a lot of people even know that the US dollar is no longer backed by gold. But then what gave gold the value, right? Interesting take. Back to the video. Let's see his angle here.
What's crazy is they go to war, they get ready to go to battle, and then Enki says, I have an idea that will stop this war. There's an existing being on this planet. Existing, not something that doesn't exist.
Hold
existing.
Up.
We can add our essence to it with a slain god. So they're talking about taking the DNA or genetics from one of themselves and mixing it with the DNA of the hominid that was here. It's not specified whether it was, an ape man or anything, but they don't specify in the tablets. But to create a worker being. And they began to do this genetic modification, probably disconnecting some of our DNA, making genetic modifications to us to get us to take orders from them. They inserted something called a worship gene, which was just discovered recently, that human beings have a gene inside of them that can be turned on and turned off. It can be turned off in a laboratory setting. It can also be turned off with a magnetic field around your head. And when it's off, you don't want to worship anything outside of yourself. You look inside, and when it's on, you look to get something from the outside. So this is incredible. And so they made us worship.
That's great.
Yes.
Inside of us.
Yeah.
To make us worship them. Wow,
Right.
how genius.
It's incredible, because then you're not a slave anymore. You're doing this for the honor of the gods.
And for people who think all this talk is really crazy, I want to put into perspective that we talked about this the other day, that during which war was it where the Soviet Union was experimenting? It was scientists in the Soviet Union, correct? They're experimenting with creating a chimpanzee human being hybrid
Whoa.
that they would probably send to war.
Yeah.
So instead of having regular people, we
What,
would
that
make
Planet of the
this
Apes?
monster,
Yeah.
this freak, ape man, and send him to war and have him
Program.
crush the enemies.
Yeah.
It's like it's just how crazy is that? They knew how strong chimps are. I got an idea. Let's
Yeah.
turn a chimp human, and that way, if he dies, who gives a fuck?
Right.
We made him. Get him to go to work for us.
Yeah.
And now, if you're a supremely enlightened being, wouldn't you think of human beings with all of our folly and all of our chaos and all of our war and bullshit and the internet and
Wow. Honestly, I'm blown away. I always listen more than I talk when it's Joe Rogan. And, for me, Joe Rogan and Billy Carson is literally the best duo you can have, right? Because you have Joe Rogan here who loves aliens. He loves the conspiracies. He challenges them. He pushes back, but he's inviting to it. He's inviting to the information, right? Where Billy Carson, and I'm so happy that he's on here because Billy Carson comes with facts. Billy Carson comes with a lot of, he studied the tablets. He has so much history behind him that's backing a lot of what he says. So great video, phenomenal video. Thank you for watching. Make sure you slap the like button, hit the subscribe button for more. Until next time, peace.